This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Livingston. I'm the IT person with the Mercer County Library System. If everyone could keep their cameras off and their microphones muted to reduce distraction and bandwidth during the presentation. That way you can also see the presenter speak and only the presenter speak. You can use the button in the top middle that is a view toggle. So if you click that, you'll be able to see view who's talking or view active cameras. And then you'll be able to see the presenter and just the presenter. Q&A will happen at the end. So if you have any questions, can you please just direct them into the chat? The chat can be located in the top left. There's a little talk bubble icon. So if you click that, you'll be able to type into the chat. And lastly, this program is going to be recorded. So if you don't want your voice or your questions or your face to be on camera, then please just keep all of them off. And I'll pass you over to Albana.
Hi, and my name is Albana. I'm one of the adult programming librarians of Mercer County Library, and I actually worked on scheduling this presentation with Trisha Bailey of Caregivers of New Jersey, because I think it's a useful program and people, the small audience who we have here, will take advantage of it. Want to mention also the other upcoming programs. We're in the middle of summer reading now, and we have a mix of virtual and in-person programs outdoors. So you can take a look at our website, www.mco.org, for events calendar. The next special highlight on behalf of the Lawrence branch will be the history of the Lawrence branch, and that virtual program will take place virtually again on July 20th. So now I'm giving the word to Trisha, and I'll turn myself off. Okay. You can unmute.
You've
All right, can you hear
yourself?
me?
Yes, there you go.
Sorry about that. I also have kids at home right now, and it's a little crazy. Well, thank you, Alvina. Thank you so much for allowing me to join you and your viewers here at Mercer County Library. I appreciate the opportunity to come and share with all of you tonight. My name is Trisha Bailey. I am a support coordinator and the trainer for Caregivers of New Jersey, which is part of a broader organization called the Family Resource Network. And Caregivers of New Jersey specifically is an agency that serves adults with disabilities throughout the state of New Jersey. And specifically what I do is I provide support coordination services. So when an individual receives a budget from DDD, they will be assigned a support coordinator that helps connect them to different services and supports that they need. Specifically today, I'm going to be talking about the transition into the adult system of services. And so if you're watching today and you have a child who is in high school and is nearing high school graduation, or maybe not even quite there, this is definitely something you're going to have to start thinking about. So I'm going to be going through the step-by-step process for children that are aging out of the children's system and entering into the adult system of care. Again, as mentioned, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, just please hold them to the end and I will go over all questions. All right, so as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the transition into the adult system. And really, if you're watching today and you're a parent, of course, you want this transition to go as smoothly as possible. It's a time where there's a lot of questions that come up, and it's a new time for families. You're unsure what to expect. So what does a smooth transition look like? Well, a smooth transition is really going to identify the right combination of services that your child has already had in place and is receiving currently that you may want to continue. But then you're also going to identify new supports new resources, new community connections that are really going to help your child move on to that next level and help your child and your family succeed. And so I'm hoping that through my presentation tonight, you're going to get a good idea of what this transition is going to look like. So New Jersey's Division of Developmental Disabilities, which I'll refer to as DDD, they are New Jersey's adult system. So they provide public funding for services and supports that help New Jersey adults ages 21 and older who have disabilities live as independently as possible. So services and supports are available in the community from different independent community providers, as well as 5 state-run developmental centers. Now, DDD uses a Medicaid-based fee-for-service reimbursement system. So basically that means you can purchase individual services for your child. There's no contract like there used to be in the past. And there's standardized service rates for those services. Things are purchased individually and billed in smaller units. So any type of service you might be interested in is now this type of system. It's called a fee-for-service system. Now, when your child does become eligible for services with DDD, they're going to be enrolled into either one of 2 different waiver programs. There is the supports program or the community care program. And which program they're enrolled into really is just going to depend upon their specific needs. The biggest difference between the 2 programs is that the community care program does have a portion of the budget that's specifically for individual supports. So that can be care that your child needs in the home or a residential group home setting, for example. That's the biggest difference between the 2 programs. Right now, there is a waiting list for the community care program. You could add your child's name to the waiting list at any time. However, it tends to take several years for your child's name to move up into that top spot and be potentially eligible to be enrolled in that program. So I'm going to be going through a timeline now that is going to apply to students who either are going to be nearing high school graduation next year, or maybe your child's already graduated this year. But the first step is always going to be to become eligible for New Jersey Medicaid. So in order to be eligible for services with DDD, your child must be Medicaid eligible. Now, in case you don't know much about Medicaid, it provides health insurance to parents and caretakers, dependent children, pregnant women, people who are older, blind, or disabled. So for what we're talking about today, it would be for those individuals who are disabled. Medicaid will pay for hospital visits, prescription medications, different healthcare needs, doctor's visits, nursing home care potentially. And so it's pretty much, it is insurance, it's health insurance for disabled individuals who have lower income. Now, in order to be eligible for Medicaid in New Jersey, there's certain criteria that have to be met. So one is that you have to be either a resident of New Jersey, as well as a US citizen or a qualified alien. And you also have to meet specific standards for financial resources and financial income. And on top of those criteria, the individual also has to fall into one of the categories you see here at the bottom of this slide. So for what we're talking about today, it would be permanently disabled or blind. So these are the criteria for Medicaid. I don't really go into a lot of detail about Medicaid. However, I do provide a link to a website that will discuss more about the eligibility criteria, as well as the application for Medicaid as well. I could also provide this PowerPoint presentation to Albina as well, and she could email it out to anyone that registered today. Now, let's just say, for example, you want to access Medicaid in a different way. Well, another way to access Medicaid eligibility is something called Supplemental Security Income. It's also known as SSI. Now, SSI tends to be very highly recommended for individuals with disabilities who turn 18 and expect to pursue services with DDD. Remember, that's the adult system. So SSI pays benefits to adults with disabilities once they turn 18. And these individuals have limited income and resources. So the great thing about SSI is that they're not going to look at parental income or parental resources. It only looks at the income of the individual with the disability. Now, you can apply for SSI at the age of 18, just like Medicaid. And the great thing about SSI is that every New Jersey resident who receives SSI will automatically receive New Jersey Medicaid. So really, SSI protects Medicaid eligibility for the future. And, you know, the way I want people to think about this is that, you know, most individuals with disabilities, and not all, but most, are going to have limited income and resources throughout the rest of their lives. And so as long as they continue and qualify for that SSI, that's why it's going to protect their Medicaid eligibility. So SSI is connected to the New Jersey Medicaid. So that's what I want you to get at this portion. I do also provide a link for how to learn more information about SSI benefits. Again, you could do a simple Google search online and these links will come up as well. Now, let's just say, though, an individual is not eligible for SSI because they do have a monthly income or some sort of financial resources that are above the limits that the government allows. So typically speaking, that's $750 a month or less than $2,000 in assets. You can still apply for Medicaid. And so there's a couple ways you can do that. Is you can contact your local County Board of Social Services. There's also another great website called njfamilycare.org. So there are different ways that you can still access Medicaid, even if you're not eligible for supplemental security income. All right, so that was step one, okay? So step one is always to apply for Medicaid. Now, once you have Medicaid eligibility, the next step is going to be to apply for DDD eligibility. So this can also occur at the age of 18, but once you have the Medicaid eligibility portion of it. Okay, so if your child turns 18, you're going to want to contact the DDD Community Services Office nearest to where you live. And you could also search online to get a list of those office locations. You could also download DDD's eligibility application at this website link here, again, or just do a search for it online. But at the age of 18, as long as you have Medicaid, you can begin that application process with DDD. So in order to be eligible for DDD services, they're going to look at a few different things. So the first is that your child is going to have to be determined to meet the functional criteria of having an intellectual or developmental disability. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The second is that they have to be Medicaid eligible and maintain that eligibility. And the third is that they have to establish and prove that New Jersey is the applicant's primary residence. So what are these functional criteria? Well, functional criteria of having a disability is that your child has to have a chronic developmental disability. Now, this can be physical and or intellectual in nature. And this disability has to have manifested prior to the age of 22. And it also has to be a lifelong condition. So many times DDD will look for some sort of official diagnosis from a doctor. It might be different, health reports that you've received throughout the years. They're going to want to see some of these things to prove these things. And then the last thing is that the disability has to substantially limit your child in at least 3 areas of life activity. So the areas of life activity that I'm referring to are in this chart here. So at least 3 of them. So self-direction, mobility, learning, self-care, economic self-sufficiency, the ability to live independently, or communication. So they have to be substantially limited in at least 3 of those areas. So if your child meets the criteria, DDD will say, okay, your child does meet the requirements and they are eligible for DDD. So what happens next? Well, the next step will be to complete the New Jersey Comprehensive Assessment Tool. This is called the NJCAT. You'll receive a phone call from someone at DDD, and they will schedule a time to do this very long assessment with you. So it's about a 14-page assessment, and it's going to assess your child in 3 different areas. So self-care, behavioral, and medical. So there are a lot of different questions, about what type of support needs your child has in these different areas. And the results of this NJCAT are going to establish the tier in which an individual is assigned. So there are tier letters A through E, and each tier is associated with a corresponding budget that your child will receive to access services and supports through DDD providers. Okay, so a tier A individual, this is the lowest tier. These are individuals that do not require as much support as a tier E individual. So as you would imagine, a tier A person has less of a budget than a tier E. The tier also determines how much different provider agencies get reimbursed and paid for the supports that they offer different individuals. So when it comes to completing the NJCAT, I always tell families, it really should be done by the person that knows the child the best. They're going to answer a lot of questions. And, as parents, we tend to want to think the best of our children. And so we might answer questions to make our children look or sound a little bit better. But I always tell families, don't do that. Answer the questions as if your child's having their worst day and not their best day. There are many times that I'm trying to connect families to supports and their children don't have enough money in their budget. And then when we go back and look at that NJCAT, we see that there really are a lot of discrepancies in there. So, answer those questions as if the child's having their worst day. Now, once the NJCAT is completed and your child is in his or her last year of school-based services, or they're already 21, this is when DDD is going to move you on to the next step of completing the Support Coordination Agency Selection Form. So this is a form that the parent or guardian fills out and they submit it to DDD. So what is support coordination? I thought I would talk a little bit about exactly what that is. So support coordination is a division-funded service that assists individuals in gaining access to needed program and state services, as well as needed medical needs, social, educational needs. And so the great thing about support coordination is that this is funded by DDD. So anyone that has a DDD budget will have to pick a support coordination agency to work with, but that service doesn't come out of their total budget that they get for the year. So what do support coordinators do? Well, there's 4 main things: individual discovery, plan development, the coordination of services, and monitoring. So when we talk about individual discovery, support coordinators use something called a person-centered approach. And this is a way that we get to know individuals that we serve. And so what person-centered planning or a person-centered approach means is that we always keep your child in the center. You know, we want to meet their needs, help them reach their goals, both short-term and long-term. So the child, the individual, is always part of the planning process. And support coordinators use something called the person-centered planning tool with a family. So it has a lot of questions that we talk through with the family and with the individual to help get to know them better. The next thing that we'll do is we help the individual write something called the Individualized Service Plan. So this is also known as the ISP. And so just like in school-based services, children have an IEP, it's an educational plan. In the adult system, they have a service plan. So the support coordinator is going to take all of the information from the NJCAT and that person-centered planning tool and through discussions with the family, and we're going to write a plan and help connect that individual to services and supports that they need to help move them towards their goals. The next thing that we do is we monitor and we follow up with different providers that individuals are using and with the family, just to make sure that, you know, the services and the plan are being received, that the individual is always staying safe, and that progress is being made towards goals, and, you know, that the individual is always staying within their allotted budget. And so we do this through phone calls every month with the individual and or parent, as well as face-to-face visits as well. You know, we do monthly contacts, and, you know, prior to COVID, we were not able to go see families face-to-face. However, slowly but surely, it seems that that's opening up. So this table here is an example of the different services that can be funded through the division, through the budget. And so you'll see there's all different kinds of services, everything from, you know, occupational therapy and physical therapy and speech, to respite, to environmental modifications and assistive technology. I actually do a webinar all about these different DDD services. And so if anyone is interested in that, you can send me an email and I can connect you to that. Okay, so if we're looking at this timeline on a month-to-month basis, September through June, excuse me, is normally a preparation and planning period for families. So this really encompasses that last year of high school. And, you know, this is a time where families should really begin to look into and do research on different agencies in their area and different resources that are available. And there's a great website called planningforadultlife.org. Excuse me, they have a lot of different resources on that website. They have different webinars on many different topics you can access. They'll also advertise different opportunity expos that are occurring in your area. And so opportunity expos are when a bunch of different providers will set up tables and you can go and meet them and learn about the different services that they provide. This time should also be a time when you're learning about support coordination. So you want to learn about the different agencies that are out there throughout the state. There's a place called the Bog Center through Rutgers University that has a wonderful brochure on support coordination and the different agencies that are out there throughout the state. So you definitely want to spend time researching agencies that are out there. And then another thing I encourage families to do is to actually practice filling out that person-centered planning tool. And so if you do a search online, I also provide the link here. You can see what one of these look like and just get an idea of the type of information that support coordinators are really going to, you know, want to learn about your child when that time comes. February and March of that last year of high school is when you will begin to choose your top 2 support coordination agencies that you're interested in. And so you'll fill out the support coordination agency selection form, and you'll identify both a top choice and a second choice. This will increase, you having the chance of getting an agency that you want and that you're interested in. If you don't choose one, DDD will auto assign you an agency. However, I always recommend to families to really take the time to research and pick an agency that you want to work with. So the last thing I want to do is just go over, what do you look for in a support coordination agency? One of the things you want to ask when you call these agencies is, are they training their support coordinators in writing ISPs and filling out that person-centered planning tool? You might want to ask them if they have a trainer on staff as well, because this really is going to ensure that they are receiving the proper training. I always recommend you go with an agency that has at least 12 to 15 years of experience if possible, because you want to have an agency that is really familiar with a lot of the resources going on in the area that you live. The second thing is you want to ask is, are they familiar with the resources in your county? Definitely ask them, are they going to assign you a support coordinator that lives maybe not in your county, but at least close to where you live? You definitely, if you live in Mercer County, you do not want a support coordinator that lives in Sussex County, because they're not going to understand and know most likely about the different resources in Mercer. And so definitely ask them, are they going to assign you to someone that lives near where you live? You also want to ask them if they're going to have that plan, that ISP, up and running, approved within 30 days. It should never take months and months and months for a plan to get approved and for resources and services to get put into place. Some other questions you might want to ask is whether or not they can connect you to local support groups, if they have, some sort of system in place for emergencies. Another big one is, does the agency approve their own plans, or are you going to have to wait for DDD's approval? So there are some agencies out there that have been released by the division to approve their own plans. And so what this means is that you're going to get connected to services and supports faster. You don't have to wait for it to go to the division. The agency can approve them themselves. So these are just, some recommendations that I offer to families. And of course, I have to give a plug for Caregivers of New Jersey. We can answer yes to all of those questions. We've been providing support coordination for over 15 years and are one of the 3 original agencies in the state, actually. Okay, so as we sum things up, the month of April, so again, this is getting very close to graduation. DDD is going to assign the student to a support coordination agency. So you are going to get that official assignment, and the support coordination agency will get the referral, and they'll be notified that they have received your child in their agency. Soon after that, you're going to get a call from the support coordinator, and the entire process will begin, to where you're going to be communicating a lot with that support coordinator. We're going to talk through that person-centered planning tool and look at the NJCAT and really talk about, how do you envision the days of your child? What do you see them doing on a daily basis? And, a good support coordinator is really going to have that ISP approved before the student exits the school system. And so, most kids that are phasing out of high school and getting ready to graduate, they'll have an exit IEP meeting. Your support coordinator, if you're assigned a support coordinator by then, they could attend that exit IEP meeting as well, which really is a bonus for the support coordinator as well as the family. So I hope that my presentation tonight has given you a better idea of what this transition process looks like. I started the presentation talking about a smooth transition. And, really, with the proper communication and a trustworthy support coordination agency, there really is no reason why this transition can't and shouldn't be a smooth one. I hope the information that I've shared tonight is helpful. If any of you viewing this presentation has any specific questions that you want to ask, I'm providing my work cell phone number as well as my email address as well. You could also check out our website at njcaregivers.org. We are providers of support coordination in the counties that you see on this slide. And so if you live in one of these counties and have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much again for allowing me to provide this information to you tonight.
Okay, thank you very much, Trisha. I don't have any questions, but if someone has, I'll be glad to answer.
I don't think so.
And we'll be glad to provide your contact information if some people couldn't join, but they'll be interested to know more.
No problem.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
All right, have a good night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.